I'm Michael Essenburg of Close the Gap Now, and I want to talk with you about how you can help your students connect what they study and what the Bible teaches. What they study and what the Bible teaches. It's really important for students at Christian schools to connect what they study and what the Bible teaches. And you might be wondering, is there some framework out there that I can use? Well, I've got a framework that I've used with some success, and what I'd like to do is share that framework with you. Now, the framework kind of looks like one big triangle divided into four smaller triangles, and each of the triangles is touching each other, and I'm going to walk you through the various triangles. Remember, we're trying to get kids to connect what they study and what the Bible teaches, so all parts of this model are connected. We'll start with content and skills. You know, the stuff we teach. Grammar, quadratic equations, fitness skills, writing, speaking, that sort of thing. It's really important for students to learn those sorts of things because it helps them understand God's world. To that, we want students to understand and connect biblical principles, relevant biblical principles, principles that naturally connect to what the students are studying. And if we really want students to make the connections between the content and skills and biblical principles, it's important to bring in their life experience. I talked with a high school student about this, and he said, if you really want to get me to connect what I study and what the Bible teaches, to deeply understand it, you got to tap my life experience. That'll really help me grasp it better. So you can see now we've got content, skills, biblical principles, and life in the three yellow triangles. And something that I found that sort of is an easy way to pull all these together is asking essential questions. Asking open-ended questions that will tie together content, skills, biblical principles, and life. For example, what's wrong? Or what's God's purpose for? Those sorts of things. Once you've got this sort of plan in mind, the last part of it has to deal with assessment. Assessment. You can help kids connect what they study and what the Bible teaches by assessing it. Now you'll notice that I've got purple arrows. They actually form the letter A, and they also show you how the various components of this model would get connected. Now let me walk you through this, giving you some actual examples. Imagine that you're teaching English 10 and you're doing the Holocaust memoir night. And you're going to focus on disrespect, racism, and discrimination as depicted in that Holocaust memoir. And you want to get your students to connect that to biblical principles. So you teach them, have them do a Bible study on and wrestle with various biblical principles. For example, because the Bible tells us to love our neighbors, we must seek the good of anyone it's within our power to help. So you've got those two. To that, you want to tap life experience. You want to talk with the kids about examples of disrespect, racism, or discrimination from their own life experience. Get them talking about it. Actually, that'll help them better understand the book that you're studying, and it'll also put sort of meat on the bones of the biblical principles. It helps them come alive so they can see why it's so important to follow God's truth, to love their neighbors, and to seek the good of those around them. Now, an easy way to get the discussion going, perhaps this unit going, or a way to help everyone connect together the various aspects of what they're studying is to ask essential questions. And you could ask, well, what's wrong with the world? Or you could ask, who's your neighbor? You know, those two questions, what's wrong with the world and who's your neighbor, are good discussion starters, are good ways to get kids to grapple with the content. Disrespect, racism, discrimination are good ways to get them to grapple with biblical principles, are good ways to get them to grapple with life. I like to ask a lot of questions, so I usually use questions to pull things together. So when you're dealing with a Holocaust memoir and you're wanting to get kids to focus on loving their neighbors, and you're tapping their life experience about disrespect, racism, and discrimination, you could ask, what's wrong with the world and who's my neighbor? Now at the end of this, to sort of cement the learning, to help them really connect what they study and what the Bible teaches, I would suggest that you give an assessment. It sort of cements the learning, solidifies the learning. So you could give, like for example, a 750-word essay, and here's an actual prompt. How significant a part of what's wrong with the world is the tendency to disregard the human dignity of others. And how should a Christian respond? Illustrate your answer from literature, history, current events, and your own experience. Be sure to address the relevance of the biblical concepts of the image of God and the second greatest commandment, love your neighbor. Let me share that prompt with you one more time. I think it would be helpful. You're going to have your students write a 750-word essay on the following. How significant a part of what's wrong with the world is the tendency to disregard the human dignity of others, and how should a Christian respond? Illustrate your answers from literature, history, current events, and your own experience. Be sure to address the relevance of the biblical concepts of the image of God and the second greatest commandment, love your neighbor as yourself. Well, what kind of results do you get when you give an assessment like this? Well, one student wrote, I have no right to choose whether or not I should help. The day I chose to follow my consistent and loving God, I threw away the option of apathy. So you can see you can get some pretty good results using this model. Now let me just quickly run through it again. It's basically a set of interconnected or connecting triangles in which you want to have kids take the content and skills that they learn and connect them with biblical principles and life experience, which will really help them better connect what they study and what the Bible teaches. And a good way to pull this together and to kick off a discussion is by asking a essential question like, what's wrong with the world? And then you can solidify the learning by tapping it off with an assessment.